Hello, I'm Dr. Jules Lipoff. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Dermatology here in Philadelphia at the Katz School of Medicine at Temple University. Today, my topic is misinformation in dermatology. So just as an outline of what I'm going to be talking about in misinformation, first, what information is the public learning about dermatology? Not only what information, who are the people, who are the influencers, who are the important figures that are sharing that information? What can we study and learn from how patients use social media? And given that there is a lot of misinformation, perhaps insurmountable amount, how can we combat it? What's a realistic strategy? So as we all know, during COVID-19, there was an inordinate amount of misinformation being spread. And how can we combat that? This is a challenge. Misinformation has always been a problem, I would argue, but it's just that internet and social media has amplified it to a degree that we have not seen before. And dermatology, is no stranger to this. We see this with COVID, with vaccination information, with all sorts of information in the news media as a whole. But dermatology is not a stranger. So as an example, I'm going to bring up one study that we had did, a medical student at the time, Mila Taminga and I, studying how sunscreen is described in parenting blogs. So we did a mixed method study, quantifying the types of comments and also qualitatively analyzing the comments that were made. So, for instance, as an example of what misinformation is, this was a sunscreen discouraging post that said that this particular product was well researched and has many benefits, but it protects from the sun. My results have been drastic. Before I could burn in 15 minutes. Now I can handle moderate sun exposure without any burn. It's not a sunscreen. That's not truth. That's not accurate. So that's an example of misinformation, something that's being promoted inaccurately. In this study, we studied, how information was engaged with after it had been posted. And we found that misinformation receives substantially more engagement. So if a post says sunscreen's bad or you shouldn't use it, it's much more likely to get post, comment, likes than if it encourages sunscreen. So that's pretty frustrating. So who is sharing this health misinformation? So from the research that we've done, it does seem that board-certified dermatologists appear to nearly always provide reliable information. So that's great. However, when you look at the influencers, most are not board-certified dermatologists. For instance, in this study that we published in the Journal American Academy of Dermatology, we did an analysis looking at all of the influencers in the dermatology hashtags on Instagram. And we looked up all of those influencers' credentials, and we found that only 4% of them were actually board-certified dermatologists. So we're not really controlling the narrative. Further, there have been many other studies finding similar issues. There was a study of TikTok showing dermatologists were the main source of educational videos, a plurality at 41%, and they adhered to the guidelines almost all the time. However, a third of the videos were posted by patients, and they tended to promote things like homemade remedies, for instance, raw potatoes to cure acne, banana peels to dissolve warts. It's not that any of this could be useful or accurate. It's not being top-down driven by the ones with the most expertise or knowledge. Further, why are people sharing health misinformation? Why are people promoting things? Well, we have to remember, sometimes people just want to share information, but there are a lot of potential ulterior motives. Specifically, when you get better engagement, there are financial conflicts of interest. So, for instance, in this study of TikTok, we found that 35% of dermatology influencers featured promotional content on TikTok. And we found that non-credentialed dermatology-related accounts had the highest rate of promotional content. So if they're not credentialed and they are dermatology-related, most of the time they're promoting something. And that includes ads like skincare brand partnerships, product links, and discount codes. Even though dermatologists represent only a fraction even them on TikTok feature promotional content. So we have to be thinking about, what are the incentives and does that undermine the quality of the content? And we're looking at social media, we're looking at the internet, but we don't want to cast aspersions and think that the institutions are any better. When we look at textbooks and educational material, like textbooks and how they represent skin of color, there certainly are a lot of problems there as well. For instance, we've done many research on dermatology textbooks, on modules, grand round conferences, which is now published, and representation social media, and find that we're not representing our patients accurately, which could really affect the way we train and learn about our patients. And even the way mainstream dermatologists promote education may have significant flaws. So we've talked about that there's misinformation out there in general in dermatology. People are putting things out there. They're mostly not experts. They may have ulterior motives or financial conflicts of interest in promotions. What can we learn about how patients are using the internet and social media? So we found this study very interesting, that on Reddit, many patients are posting anonymously pictures of their genitals to crowdsource sexually transmitted disease diagnoses. What does that say? Well, it certainly speaks to patients not feeling they can connect with doctors. It's that they can't trust them maybe, or they have insurance issues. There are various barriers. So we partnered with the lead author of that study, and we did a similar study in dermatology and found some of the same issues. That this is not unique to STIs. It's definitely throughout all of Reddit. There people are using these unsupervised medical forums to seek medical advice. So this could be an opportunity to learn about patients' needs, and also an opportunity to see what patients are trying. So we went beyond that, and we have studied using AI techniques, the technique natural language processing, which evaluates the probability of words being close to each other. And we've been able to use AI to interpret, to get a sense of what patients are talking about, and maybe the potential to identify areas where we should be doing more clinical research. Just because a patient posts some home remedy doesn't mean it can't be accurate. But if we're seeing something posted a lot, maybe we need to investigate that. And certainly we're seeing like posts about sunscreen on the blogs have issues, and different social media platforms do have different potential to raise attention to important issues like skin cancer. So, we've talked about all this information. It can be overwhelming. Okay, so there's a lot of misinformation. So what are we supposed to do about it? Well, many doctors are really interested in how do we harness social media to fight that? How do we correct misinformation? And some of us use Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and some of us are more familiar than others. So what might be an effective strategy to combat misinformation? So it does seem that when they're from institutional groups, when they put out campaigns to promote good health, they tend to use fear. They tend to say, don't use tanning beds, don't go in the sun, it'll cause cancer. But if you actually look at what is effective, that's not what works. Effective engagement, which gets most engagements and likes and shares, is instead associated with didactic, myth-busting, using celebrity endorsements, being positively messaged, and humorous. There's another study that showed that 20% of COVID misinformation had a prominent individual, like a politician or entertainer, as the primary source, and it went top down. So that accounted for 69% of engagement as people shared it. So you have to be funny, you have to be positive, and you need influencers. You need big time people who have a lot of followers. So you can't just anyone put out good information. It takes a lot of intentionality and how you're going to do it, and to reconsider the traditional strategies that organizations have used to scare people out of doing bad behaviors. So I do think doctors should use social media. There are many reasons beyond combating misinformation. I do think that health communication is part of our jobs inherently. I think it's an effective way to build a network amongst our peers. I think it's important to promote our work, to have pride in it. I sometimes there's a hesitancy to self-promote, but if you're going to put all that effort into publishing something, you should make sure that people see it. And there's studies to show that when you promote it, it increases downloads and improves alt metrics and citations. You're more likely to get feedback. And then when you express opinions and give feedback, you can attract collaborators and students and at least get in that conversation. I think of the literature as a conversation, but I think social media is a more immediate form of that. And in general, it's good to stay informed of the latest developments. However, we must acknowledge that when doctors use social media, there are risks. They may be open to harassment, threats. They can be hacked. Even if you put something out into the world that you felt it was backed up, it could be taken out of context. It could be misunderstood. You might be exposed to things that are negative. You could be trolled. If you say something inappropriate, that could come back to haunt you too. Otherwise, I struggle with this. Using social media can be distracting or waste time when you could be spending your time with your family or your practice more directly. And it can call unwanted attention. It can perhaps alienate certain collaborators. So I think you do have to be careful and smart with how you use it, but it is a tool, and I think we shouldn't neglect using it. So we've talked about misinformation. We've talked about what we can learn on social media. We can talk about how doctors should consider using social media. But my question is misinformation too big of a problem for us to fight one at a time? And I tend to think it is. I think there is always a role for physician leaders to provide information to counter that. But I think if we are going to tackle this Goliath of misinformation, we need more comprehensive strategies to at least mitigate the problem. So one area I think that's very exciting that could have potential is leveraging AI to play a role. So we're certainly seeing a lot of excitement about chatbots like ChatGPT and everything. Now, building on our previous work with natural language processing, analyzing Reddit forums, we did a study where in a test environment, we deployed benevolent chatbot to detect misinformation. We specifically sought to detect tanning misinformation and misinformation about essential oils. And we were able to effectively detect misinformation and cause posts to correct information and link to reliable information like the American Academy of Dermatology. But would this work in an organic community? How would you feel if someone was tapping on your shoulder and always correcting things that you said wrong? So this is however we come up with ideas, I think this is among the strategies we should consider. What is a systematic approach, a blanket approach, not one message at a time, because it's a drop in the bucket. So I do think that AI could play an important role. There's recent research showing that ChatGPT is able to respond to patient inquiries, and it's even perceived as more empathetic and better liked than physician responses. But can we ensure that ChatGPT responses are valid and don't perpetuate misinformation? In some of our work, we definitely see a tendency for ChatGPT to always want to give an answer, whether or not that is the most evidence-based or accurate answer. So I think there's a lot of excitement, a lot of potential. I think we need to be responsible and careful, but there is a lot of potential. So in summary, as far as misinformation in dermatology misinformation is widespread and is a problem. Most misinformation is provided by non-dermatologists, and misinformation does get more engagement. Patients' use of social media may inform future research and may prove an important area for engagement. And fighting misinformation by providing easy access to high-quality information, but not with fear, with humor and positivity, whether from individual doctors, AI algorithm, or any way we come up with. If any of you have any ideas, I think it's going to be very important. So I want to acknowledge collaborators such as Chris Callison-Birch, computer scientist at Penn, who worked with me on those NLP studies, Stephanie Taitano and Jason Moore, who inspired me with their work promoting physicians to use social media, and Alexander Zink, a dermatologist in Germany who has also supported this work. Thank you very much. Reach out anytime, engage with me on social media, through my website, or email me if you have any questions. Thanks for your time.